That's a good question. John Frost, how necessary is college to becoming a good writer? It's not necessary at all in terms of the writing. Whether or not it's necessary in terms of the background, it's certainly not necessary. The question is it worth it, I guess? It's certainly not necessary. There's just hundreds of thousands of great writers who never went to college. I'm trying to think what college really did for me. I ought to be able to think of something. I was there for 5 years, 7 years of college down the drain. I loved the football game, and I loved the college. I loved the experience of going to college. I loved being on campus. I loved the football games. I loved getting ready for the football games. I loved Gainesville in the fall when it was starting to get cool, and hanging out with friends, and lots of people, like 4 people sharing a 2-bedroom apartment or whatever, and just hanging out with people your age and not being at home or under adult supervision. We did a lot of really cool things. I don't know if they still do them down there. I'd be surprised if they weren't like banned. But there was a quarry where we would go, just like in Breaking Away, one of my favorite movies ever. You just go diving off of this cliff into the water. And it was, all I remember about that was that it was high enough. And I'd done some high diving ever since I was, 3 or 4, just jumping off of high boards. And I loved it. But this going off of the quarry in Gainesville, or outside of Gainesville, the only thing I remember about that was it was high enough so that you're doing that normal thing and you just feel like you're just free falling. But this was high enough so that all of a sudden there was this rush of air, this kind of, and that was fun. And the other thing we did out there, which is a little weird, creepy anyway, was we actually went spelunking. There were lots and lots of caves in Florida. The whole thing's basically like Swiss cheese, and it's underground sinkholes and stuff. And some kid had discovered this cave, and we would go down there, and you could just keep pushing back, and there was a part where you had to climb, and it was about that high and about that wide, and you had to kind of crawl through there, and you could feel your shoulders getting stuck, and that was a little dicey. So you just kind of, just, all right, so calm down, relax. But when we got back there would be 6, 7 of us would go at the same time. When I got back there, in the back, we would turn off all the lights, because no phones or anything, we all just had flashlights. And that was black. That was dark. Sorry, hang on. Let me just adjust this camera 1 second here. It was dark. It was like crazy dark. So yeah, that was it. So college did me some good in terms of the experience, in terms of just meeting people, getting a lot of different perspectives on things, and being on your own. And I came really close to being killed any number of times, it seems to me. I don't know how I made it. But I think probably the closest I ever came was we went to Crescent Beach, which is I think it's just below St. Augustine's, about a 2-hour trip. And we went out there one night, and the guy who was driving was just smashed, just crazy drunk. And you had to take these 2-lane single-lane highways, because there was no freeway direct out there. And this guy was going, he must have been doing 80 miles an hour down these curving roads, and I just thought for sure we're not going to make it. And then we did make it, and then we slept on the beach, on Crescent Beach, because you can drive onto the beach. And I remember waking up at about 8 or 9 in the morning and being underneath some kind of a sheet or something, and unbearably hot, and it was just what was the worst sensation ever. I had that happen to me when I was out in the Everglades too, star parties. You'd go to sleep at 4 or 5 in the morning or something, take a little nap before you went home, and then I woke up in a VW van out in the middle of the Everglades in the middle of summer. It was about 9 or 10 in the morning. Everybody else was sleeping. It was unbearably hot and humid and nasty. So specifically about your writing question, John, the only thing that's necessary to being a good writer, in my opinion, is courage. Really, I would say that's basically it. I grew up with excellent grammar. I went to British schools, so that was never a problem for me. And they taught it in a sensible way. We didn't. We never deconstructed sentences because we never had to. You know, it was just easy. It was like this like the grammatical question of Susie and me went to the movies. It's like, well, first of all, just take out the Susie and. Me went to the movies or I went to the movies? I went to the movies. Susie and I went to the movies. Pretty simple, really. So, and I've always had that kind of pretty good English language familiarity. But when I say courage, I mean it because the essence of good writing is having the honesty to go places that are interesting to other people and having the courage to just put it out there. You know, they say write what you know, and that's really true. And you don't have to know everything, but if you're going to write about something, you better know an awful lot about it. And frankly, you probably shouldn't be writing it unless it's already consumed you. And if it's a subject that's consumed you already, then you should know most of it already. It's pretty much verbatim what happened with the What We Saw series. Somebody came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to do a 4-hour special on stuff you already know real well and that you love?" Yes, I believe I do. But courage is the number one quality of a good writer. Because if you really are writing about anything that's worth writing about, if you're writing a fictional character, you're going to put a lot of yourself into that character, or you'll put some of yourself into this character and some into another, or maybe you'll put a lot of your brother or whatever into this character. All that's fine. But the one thing you have to do is you have to get out genuine emotion, and usually that comes from discussing things that are a little painful for you. It's easier when you're talking about another character. It's a fictional character. You can talk about whatever you want to. But you got to put the truth down there on the paper. If you don't put the truth on the paper, no one's interested. So you really need to write about the stuff that just really lights you up. I can't imagine writing about anything other than that, the stuff that I'm interested in. And like I said, I have an opportunity now. I'm working on a 10-part series for Daily Wire. And it's also something I know quite a lot about. And now I see the word screenplays here in the comment section live here at Twitch. And the comment from Eric Blake was, whenever possible, show, don't tell. It's not just whenever possible. It's never tell anything. Always show things in a screenplay. If you're interested in writing screenplays, I think anybody who would be interested in writing a screenplay would be, and who hasn't had any experience with it yet, I think you would be shocked to the core, shocked to find out how formulaic screenplays are and how important that formula is. It's one of these things it's like the Hercules, like the C-130 Hercules. It's just the perfect design, and it can't improve it. You just can't. It will not be improved upon. 737, another great example. Just can't imagine anything. We've tried everything, and the twin-engine jetliner with the engines below the wings is pretty much the best configuration. So if you're interested in writing a screenplay, you have to understand both the technical aspects of the screenplay, because it's got to be formatted in a certain way, and if it's not, no one will read it. And then you also have to get out of the habit of having your characters say, well, you remember that time I was there at the bridge and I got hit by the car and it knocked me into the pond? Yes, I remember that. Well, that sure was something. Just show it. Just, show it. And don't tell about it. If you're interested in writing screenplays, there are 2 books I can recommend. 3. I don't remember some of the authors. The first one, if you want to read them, you should read them in this order. First one's called Screenplay by Sid Field. And Screenplay is basically about the format, how the format works in terms of the indentation. And it's also basically a very clear beginning on the 3-act structure. You would be amazed I mean, absolutely amazed. Just about every successful movie you've ever seen, the same things happen at the same time. You're 28 to 30 minutes in, this is going to happen. And then, 68 to 72 minutes in, this will happen. And it happens all the time. And, it's that way because it works. So I would recommend first I'd read Screenplay by Sid Field, I think. Second thing I would read is a book called How to Make a Good Script Great, which is about the power of rewriting, because scripts are not made in the writing, they're made in the rewriting. So first draft of your script, you're not building a house, you're just clearing the ground. You're just getting all the weeds out of the way and figuring out where this house is going to live. So making a good script great is very good. And then the best book I've ever read on screenwriting was called Story. And I've forgotten the name of that author as well. But that was just brilliant. I mean, and I'm glad I read that last and not first, because it came so late in my writing career that it was like really remarkable to get to it that late. But this guy was saying things like, if you have a scene where the situation is not an inverted image of the way it began when it ended, then that scene doesn't belong in your movie. In other words, if the scene doesn't completely reverse something, it doesn't belong there. I thought, my God, that's really incredible. And it's really true. Hardest part about writing, John, is having it's another side of the courage thing. And it's especially true in screenplays. Sometimes the hardest thing in writing is either anybody can cut bad stuff out of a book or a screenplay. But when you have to cut the good stuff out, that's the hard part, is when you have to cut stuff that's just really good and have the discipline to say, this is great, this is wonderful, maybe I can use it again someday somewhere, but it's not moving the story right now. The other thing that's very hard to do, which is why it's being done so often these days in these movies, is it's a very common beginner's mistake to have your character have all the power in the world to do everything that they want to do exactly according to their plan. Most writing is a form of escape for the writer. It's a way to create an alternate reality. John Hughes made 4 or 5 great movies, really great movies, that essentially was John Hughes telling the story of what would have happened if he'd gotten the girl when he was the kid, because he was always the nerdy guy. He was always the nerdy guy in Breakfast Club, and Hughes was the nerdy guy in 16 Candles and all the rest of it. And John Hughes rewrote his childhood, his teen years, his adolescence anyway, and told it the way he wanted it to come out. And because he put enough truth in there, you believed it. But this is what's the matter with so much of this social justice warrior stuff today. A very brief... not even a diversion, because this goes directly to the point, but like the original Star Wars is well written because Luke changes. Your character has to change. If they're not a different person at the end of the story than they were at the beginning, there's no point in writing it. There's not a character you can think of Schindler, for example, in Schindler's List. He starts out as just a shallow, kind of vain businessman, and he ends up being a real human being. And all characters have to change. Either they get better or they get worse. But in the original Star Wars trilogy, Luke didn't have the ability to magically do any of these things. He picked up a lightsaber and nearly cut himself in half, and he's up on the book. In the Falcon, and he's just doing it against a super easy kind of target drone thing, and he keeps getting these electric shocks, and and it's hard work. And he spends the whole second movie trying to figure out how to do this stuff, and they keep denying it. He's raising the X-Wing out of the swamp, and then he loses faith in it, and back down it goes, And because he put so much effort into it on camera, and because it was so much pain and so many reversals, you really got to like the guy. By the way, subtle thing, but if you look at it, you'll find out in the first movie, Luke is dressed in white. In the second movie, he's dressed in gray. And in the third movie, he's dressed in black. And that's not a coincidence either. It kind of mirrors what's going on inside him. But he goes from being a farm boy to being a Jedi master, a master of his emotions. And so when Luke Luke got to be so good with the lightsaber that he didn't have to use it. That was the genius of the first trilogy. He just throws it away. This is his dad, and he's going to try and save him. And then you get to the trilogies we're enduring now, and you get these characters called Mary Sues, which are characters that have all the power to do everything all the time. And you find this Rey, who's never been in a powered spaceship before, can suddenly just sit down in the Falcon and fly better than Han Solo ever flew it. Must be the Force. And then first time she picks up a lightsaber, she defeats Kylo Ren, the master of the dark side, beats him in a lightsaber fight, never touched one before. Must be the Force. And it's the childishness of these feminist writers determined to show women doing everything just so well, just as well as men. And what it does is it completely cheapens it. You just don't give a damn. You don't care. It's much, 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 much more interesting to watch Luke Skywalker try to balance a couple of stones this big than to watch Rey come out of a cave and lift, 7,000 boulders. It's just plain cheating. You don't go through anything. It doesn't cost you anything, so you don't care. And so a real problem with fiction writing, John, is you love your characters and you want them to succeed and you're kind of in their place. And, when I started playing Traveler for the first couple of times, I wore like powered battle armor to bed because I didn't want to get, killed by whatever forces. And the referee was saying, you just can't do that. I said, well, I'm wearing it. I'm wearing it. I wore powered battle armor everywhere because you want to give them everything you can to succeed and win. You got to hurt your characters, and you got to hurt them so bad it nearly kills them. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. Anyway, hopefully that helped a little bit.